It's 3 p.m. on Tuesday, April 22nd here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Conn-young. It's been more than 6 days since a nearly 7,000-ton Sewol ferry sank into waters with more than 470 people on board. Now, 108 have been confirmed dead so far, and that figure continues to rise by the hour, it seems, as more bodies are retrieved from the sunken vessel. Nearly 200 remain unaccounted for at this hour. Now, search and rescue operations now in a 7th day down off Korea's southwestern coast have been in high gear day and night, but not a single survivor has been found since the day of the accident. Search and rescue efforts, that's where we begin this afternoon at Paengmok-hang harbor, roughly 20 kilometers from the site of the ship capsized. We have a correspondent on site. Our Ji Myung-kil joins us live. Myung-kil, more bodies are being retrieved. We see that, but no news of survivors.
Unfortunately, that is the case, Conn-young. As you said, the confirmed death toll is on the rise. And because of that, a temporary funeral parlor will be set up here at the Paengmok-hang harbor. However, authorities declined to comment when the temporary funeral parlor will be set up. 2 Chinese and 1 Russian bodies were found yesterday, but 1 Chinese body was not listed on the government's missing list, raising questions to the credibility of the government's figures. Divers are focused on searching the 3rd and 4th floors today, where many high school students were when the ferry started capsizing. Family members of the missing who have been camping out here at Paengmok-hang harbor have been gathering around the list of victims, trying to match the descriptions with their loved ones. Parents broke down into tears when their child's body was confirmed. Some family members shouted out at the reporters, saying their privacy should be respected and not to reveal the identities of their sons and daughters. Still, more than 150 people remain missing, and nearly 90% of those are from a single high school, that is Tanon High School in Ansan, a largely working-class suburb of Seoul.
Right, a very tragic event indeed. Now, the international community is also lending a helping hand, aren't they?
Yes, that's right. The U.S. said Monday that it will send a Navy salvage ship to Korea in recovery of the ferry. The ship is designed to repair and salvage ships crippled in combat anywhere around the world. Since yesterday, 2 remotely operated underwater drones from the U.S. are assisting the search operations, and 3 experts from the Netherlands are helping as well. Korean authorities have also asked China to borrow barges and cranes. Today, 239 vessels, 32 aircraft, and over 750 divers are deployed for the search operation. This was Ji Myung-kil reporting from Paengmok-hang harbor.
Hundreds of divers have been very heavily involved in the search and rescue operations, but the harsh conditions they face have been well documented. Poor visibility, strong currents, and having to bring up the bodies of so many young students make their work not only physically but emotionally exhausting. Our Park Ji-won takes a look.
A rescue diver from the Korean Navy Ship Salvage Unit goes into the water with hopes of finding survivors or the bodies of the fallen. Under the surface, their visibility is limited. Pitch black really, save for an area about 20 centimeters in front of the divers' faces. The situation worsens at night. Despite the help of flares and lighting from fishing boats, divers can barely see, relying instead on distance lines or guidelines. Those lead them inside the sunken ferry and then back to safety. There are hundreds of Navy and private divers on the scene, but each guideline can only be shared by 2 divers. In the early hours of rescue operations, just 3 or 4 divers were able to get into the water because just 1 or 2 guidelines were set up. High waves and strong currents also hampered the rescue operations in the first 48 hours after the accident, which is so-called golden time for rescue operations. After numerous failed attempts, divers finally got inside the ferry on the 5th day of the tragic accident with the help of 5 guidelines that were set up. With tidal currents and waves coming this week, search operations have accelerated. However, divers are still at risk. they face the risk of decompression sickness, known as diver's disease, which took the life of a Navy diver who was participating in search and rescue efforts following the sinking of the warship Cheonan 4 years ago. Despite such risks, rescue divers continue to go into the water with faint hopes of finding a survivor, even though it's now been days since the ferry sank. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Now, with no news updates of any more survivors, the families of the scores missing continue to wait for news of their loved ones who were on board this ill-fated ferry. They have been camping out in an indoor auditorium near the accident site in Chindo, many of them in deteriorating health conditions. Our Hwang Ji-hye is there with these families. She joins us live from Chindo Indoor Auditorium. Ji-hye, I can't even begin to imagine what these families must be going through, how they have been coping with these harrowing times for the past 6-7 days.
Conn-young, it's been an agonizing week for people who are waiting here, and as you would imagine, the atmosphere is extremely heavy and depressing. Some of the families have even collapsed, while others are having a hard time eating or sleeping. Some are so ill they've been put on medication. I had a chance to talk with one of the emergency personnel here at the Chindo Gymnasium who described about the state of the families.
After several days, the families are exhausted both physically and mentally. We also feel very bad and sorry for them. So we are trying our best to give at least a little comfort to them.
There are fewer and fewer relatives of the victims here at this gymnasium now. When bodies are identified, they leave to attend to their loved ones. Representatives of the families are now in discussions on how to proceed with funerals. The families still here are clinging onto the hope of finding more survivors as the weather conditions improve today. There are notes at the entrance, Conn-young, of the gymnasium, and one of them reads, "Come back soon, daughter, so we can have dinner together." It's truly a heartbreaking scene. Yesterday, the representative of the families told the others that he had asked authorities to wrap up search and rescue operations by this Thursday. He said the authorities pledged to do their best to meet the deadline. This was Hwang Ji-hye reporting live from the Chindo Gymnasium.
Now, the cause of this tragic sinking is currently under investigation, but investigators have already ruled out the possibility of the ferry hitting a submerged rock or a drastic change in direction of over 90 degrees. Now, this was initially one of the possibilities given. Now, the structure and the loading of the vessels are increasingly being looked at as possible contributors to the sinking. For more on the marine operator and status of the investigation, we're going to connect live with ARIRANG News Song Ji-sun, and she joins us from the news center. Ji-sun, what is the latest evidence from the investigation front?
Well, Conn-young, it tells us that investigators are taking a long, hard look at the operator of the Seoul ferry. It turns out that the revenue from shipping cargo was a cash cow for the companies, which was suffering from operating losses in the slumping shipping industry. According to an audit report of Cheonghae Marine Company, its cargo profits continued to rise, eventually exceeding passenger shipping revenue. That amounted to some $19 million in 2013, up more than 70% from 4 years earlier. On the other hand, revenue from transporting passengers had been dropping. The reason? Transportation experts say it has to do with the recent rise in low airfare operators that now fly from most major cities on the peninsula to Jeju Island. Cheonghae had been operating 2 ferries, including the Seoul to Jeju Island from Incheon, as well as another connecting Incheon and Paengmok-hang Island, and one between Yeosu and Gyeongmun-do Island in Jeonnam-do Province. All the company's operations, however, had been suspended since the Seoul ferry disaster last week. And we're going to report that the prosecutors have placed more travel bans on the officials.
Right. Now, Ji-sun, aside from the commercial cargo, it seems that the water which balances these big-sized ships or ferries was also a critical factor in the sinking. How so?
Let's take a look at the layout of the Seoul ferry on the screen now. If you look at the structure of the ship, the lowest level houses the engine and the ballast tank, where water for balancing the vessel must be loaded before departure. The company had expanded its cabin capacity and for the cargo to allow more passengers and freight, and authorities have approved the renovation under one condition, that the company increase the amount of water in the tank to secure its balance. But whether the operator abided by that rule is now in question, since more water on board means more fuel is needed for the 6,800-ton vessel. Fuel, of course, costs money, and it's not a stretch to think the cash-strapped company may have cut corners to maximize its profits. Something that supports this theory is that the ship sank upside down, suggesting there was more air in the bottom level of the vessel than water in the ballast tank.
Right, well, Ji-sun, it looks like that may be more difficult to prove now that the solar ferry has sunk more than 20 meters underwater. Search and rescue operations do continue, however. Give us the latest on that.
Well, now take a look inside the cabin where rescue teams are now focusing most of their efforts. The third and fourth floors are where the most passengers were expected to be at the moment of the accident, between 8 and 9 a.m. last Wednesday morning, as it was breakfast time. Divers are also searching the fourth floor of the ferry, where the cabins for most of the Tanwon High School students were located. But at this point, the vessel lies at an almost 90-degree angle from this floor plan after sinking upside down to touch the ground underwater. Back to you, Conn-young.
All right, thank you, Ji-sun, for that. And this event, it makes it much more tragic because most of those passengers at that point of the vessel were these high school students from a single high school on a field trip to Jeju Island. So the captain and crew of the solo ferry would not be able to evade the law and will rightfully be tried under Korea's criminal law. But what about international maritime law? What's the global standard in terms of duty on the captain and crew's part, and what kind of punishment would they receive? We have a legal expert on the line via Skype, Sean Hayes, partner and co-chair of IPG Legal. Sean Hayes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about the International Maritime Convention on the Safety of Life at Sea. Now, under this convention, what is required of the captain and crew of a sinking ship, of a sinking ferry?
A captain should either stay on the ship or be in the scope of the ship before everyone's off the actual ship. Some states go farther than that. The U.S. Navy specifically says that the captain should be the last person off the actual ship. International law does not go that far, but there were many cases saying the captain can be off the ship only if the captain is still controlled of the operations of the actual ship, which doesn't seem to be the case here.
Right. Are there any steps or procedures that the captain and crew are required to take in the event of a sinking ferry?
It's a hard question to actually ask, because it is up to their judgment at that actual time. It is known, though, that the captain still should be in control of the actual ship up until everyone is off the actual ship, and it seems like that's not what happened here.
Right, Sean. Let's talk about other similar cases in other countries. One that I could think of that comes to mind off the top of my head is the sinking of an Italian cruiser Costa Concordia in 2012. Was that captain tried under the international law or Italian law?
The local law only, and we don't think he is going to be tried under international law.
Is the international law, are these crew members, or could they be forced, or could they be tried under international law? Is it binding?
No, it's absolutely not binding, and there's no true punishment mechanism under international law.
Right. Then, based on your legal expertise and experience, what kind of a verdict do we expect for the captain and crew of this solo ferry? Now, they will undergo, I'm sure, Korean maritime law.
Yeah, I think what's probably going to be happening is there is going to be a jail sentence imposed. I'm not sure what the jail sentence would be, but it looks like the general political atmosphere is to punish them under criminal law. And when that happens here, we would generally find punishment under criminal law. I don't expect. The biggest worry I have is, are we going to see punishment for the officers of this company too? It seems like at this point the primary fault should be placed not only on the captain but also on the owners of this ship.
Could we briefly go over what kind of violations that these captain and crew violated, as well as the Cheonghejin, this vessel company, and what kind of law they would be tried under, or what kind of sentences or violations they have committed?
Sentence, I'm not sure. This is a first in modern time in South Korea, so I'm not sure what they're even going to be tried under. There's talk of trying them under a special law dealing with maritime accidents. The punishment under that doesn't seem to be very strict. The president has said that they should be tried for manslaughter. So I think we have to see what's going to happen with that. The biggest issue, I think, is not the actual captain, who I think will be punished. It's the owners of this actual ship. It's going to be hard to find any paper trail of them saying that you should overload the ship or load the ship in a certain way or not put ballast on the actual ship.
All right, Sean C. Hayes, partner and co-chair of IPG legal expert here. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me on.
The bodies that have been recovered from the Sewol ferry are transferred either to hospitals or funeral halls, and we're learning that the bodies of more people are being released today. ARIRANG News Shin Se-min is out at one of the hospitals in Ansan that are receiving bodies. Now, of course, Ansan is a mostly working level suburbs of Korea, right outside of Seoul. Now, Se-min, what is the latest from where you are?
Yes, Conn-young, here at the today, a total of 11 victims will be were expected to be released today. And here at the Korea University Ansan Hospital, 5 of the deceased students have already been released. And another 5 arrived shortly thereafter, bringing the total number here now to 6. Earlier today, parents of the students made an appeal to the Ansan office, Office of Education, urging for swift rescue operations and also criticizing the media for its indiscriminate reports on this tragic accident. They asked for all of society to help them through this very difficult time. And yesterday, representatives of the families asked the authorities to wrap up the ongoing search and rescue operations by this Thursday, and the authorities said they would do their best to meet their deadline.
The teens who haven't been rescued yet, the ones that went to heaven, as well as the ones that survived, all need our care. The kids that survived feel guilty. At the hospitals, they're helping the students to comfort their minds and bodies.
Se-min, we hear the memorial altars are being set up in the city of Ansan so that people can pay their last respects to those who have passed.
That's right. The altar for Tanwon High School students and teachers are expected to be ready for mourners sometime tomorrow, especially Wednesday morning at around 9 o'clock. The group memorial altar is still in the process of being set up at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall, about 10 minutes away from here at this location of the Ansan Hospital. And friends and relatives will be able to pay tribute to those who have passed. And not only here in Ansan, but also in the city of Incheon.
ton from where the Sewol-ho ferry left the shore, another group memorial altar will be set up at the International St. Mary's Hospital, which is where 7 other recovered bodies are being held. That's all for now, and this has been Shin Se-min reporting live from Ansan University, Korea University of Ansan Hospital.
Now, Korea is not alone in this monumental task of combing the Sewol-ho ferry for survivors and bodies. With the U.S. President Barack Obama scheduled to visit Seoul later this week, Washington has made all of its resources in the region available to Korean authorities and says it'll help with the investigation into what caused the ferry to sink upon Seoul's demand. Connie Kim reports.
The U.S. remains at the ready to help Korea in this very difficult time. The Pentagon said Monday that the Navy salvage ship USS Safeguard is now sailing to the waters of Korea in case Seoul asks for help with salvage operations once they begin. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board has also pledged to help investigators determine what caused the ferry to sink if requested. The U.S. Navy ship USS Bunhammer Shar, which was conducting routine patrols in Korean waters last week, is already on the disaster site along with its helicopters. President Barack Obama, who is scheduled to arrive in Seoul for a 2-day visit later this week, has pledged full support in the ongoing search and rescue operations. The presidential advisor, Ben Rhodes, said this week during a press briefing that the Sewol-ho ferry disaster will take priority during Obama's trip to Seoul. In addition to the Sewol-ho disaster, President Obama and President Park Geun-hye are also expected to discuss North Korea's nuclear program. Rhodes said the door to dialogue remains open for Pyongyang so long as the regime is ready and willing to denuclearize. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Now, this entire country stayed united to support these victims, survivors, and the families of those missing in this ferry accident. And Korean celebrities are also reaching out to the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. LA Dodgers pitcher Yoo Hyun-jin is one of them. He held an autograph signing event with proceeds going to the survivors and families of the deceased. Others have delivered relief goods to the accident site. Here's our Kim Min-ji with this report.
A long line of baseball fans gather in front of Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, where pitcher Yoo Hyun-jin is signing autographs to raise funds to support the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. Korean-American fans who took part in the event said they wanted to help out in any way they could.
It's sad and very depressing. It must be a hard time, but I hope the families do not lose hope.
It was a sentiment shared by all who were there.
Oh, just devastation towards the families, especially when you're talking about such young victims, high schoolers that were on that boat. It's very tragic.
Ryu said that he was keeping up with the news out of Korea, adding that his thoughts were with the victims and their families. He also put up a sign on his locker that read Sewol 41614 in tribute. Ryu has already donated $100,000 through his HJ99 Foundation, earmarked for the Sewol-ho ferry disaster.
I'm hoping for good news. Please take care.
Other Korean celebrities have also been making donations. Figure skating star Kim Yeon-ah gave some $100,000 through UNICEF and tweeted that she prays for a miracle. A list of actors have also made contributions, big and small, while some have delivered relief goods to the harbor and auditorium where families have been staying. And all this to express one message, that the families and friends of this horrible disaster are not alone in this very difficult time. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Now, so search and rescue operations are in their 7th day down in Korea's southwestern coast, and the weather has been playing a big factor in that. Let's get a check of the weather conditions in Chindo with our Michelle Park. Michelle, what types of conditions are rescuers dealing with right now?
Well, currently the favorable weather and the tidal conditions are helping with the search, and today's been a mild day with less wind compared to yesterday with a highs of up to 19 degrees. Now, starting today, the area is having neap tides, which is when the tides current is at its lowest level, and those conditions will last until Thursday. And until then, search operations are likely to continue for 24 hours a day. Now, also along with the neap tides, one of the tide periods of the slow tides has already passed about an hour ago, and one more period is left at 7:31 p.m. local time. And within these periods, the tides will drop to below half a meter for an hour. Now, the current temperature of the water in Chindo is at 11.6 degrees Celsius, with winds blowing at 5.3 meters per second, and the height of the wave is at 0.5 meters, which are favorable conditions for the divers to search the vessel. Well, that's it for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Conn-young.
All right, Michelle, thank you for that. And that's all from me at this hour. Our steady coverage on the nation's search and rescue efforts in Korea's ferry disaster continues right here on ARIRANG News. Join me again at the top of the next hour.